My name is Taylor Phillips. I've already met a few people, but my name is Taylor Phillips. This is my managing partner, Jeff Wright. We are accountants with Draffin Tucker, CPA firm in Albany and Atlanta. And we came today to kind of just talk about this is intermediate one. So I know you're still getting your feet wet in accounting in general, but we just came to kind of give an overview of the industry, the career, and kind of where it can take you and things like that. And to talk a little bit about leadership as well. So, we love questions, we love interaction. It's going to make it better for y'all and for us both. So feel free to jump in and ask any questions whenever you feel the need to. So.
Interaction's required. So.
Oh, excuse me, it's required.
No, but in all seriousness, we do hope for a conversation, and we've got some material. We'll go through it. If we don't make it through any of it, but just talk about what y'all want to talk about, that's good with us. So stop us at any time. Jump in. We're going to ask y'all some questions. We hope we get some answers. Make it better for all of us. So, sound like a deal? All right. Well, as Taylor said, I'm Jeff Wright. I'm currently managing partner with Draffin Tucker. We are a regional public accounting firm. We've got about 95 employees. Actually, counted yesterday, it's 99. So we are right at 100. As Taylor mentioned, we have offices in Albany and Atlanta. In Albany, if you're familiar with Albany, we're pretty close to the corner of Westover and Gillianville. We have a freestanding building there with about 20,000 square feet. In Atlanta, we're in the Queen building. It's the one with the round crown that you can't see. But in the Concourse Plaza, if you're familiar with Atlanta, it's pretty much where 400 crosses 285. We're at that intersection. So we've just got a portion of the 12th floor in that building, about 5,000 square feet. Been in business, we need to update our slide. This is our 75th year of providing services to clients. So we are coming up on what businesses would define as their fourth generation. So getting close to 80 years. The American Institute gives a statistic about how many firms go past their first generation, or how many firms never make it past their first generation. So anybody want to take a guess at how many what percentage that might be? So somebody starts a firm, maybe they get a partner, but they never bring anybody in, grow them, invest in them, hand that firm off to the next generation. 75, but very close, 85%. I've never had anybody guess that close. Maybe you've heard this before. 85% of firms never make it past their first generation. They never recruit talent, attract talent, invest in talent, and grow that talent for them to be future leaders of the firm. We're coming up on our fourth generation. So that practice, that foundation is laid long before Taylor or I, either one, got there. We're fortunate to be beneficiaries and a product of it, and we have the responsibility to carry it forward. And the only way to do that is with good people. And so that's what we're consistently looking for. We'll talk about some of those things, some of the opportunities in the industry, the opportunities with us as well. Just a little bit more about us. We're a full-service accounting firm. We provide all levels of attestation, audits, reviews, and compilations. We do tax work. We do consulting work. About 80% of our practice is in the healthcare industry. So we provide services to hospitals, nursing homes, home health agencies, health systems, and really do that throughout the country. We've been providing services in the healthcare industry since the inception of the Medicare and Medicaid programs. That was in the late 60s. So back then, there really was a time when there was no email and no faxes and no file sharing portals and all of that. So a lot of that happened by car. And so the business and the market grew naturally just by car, and it grew geographically from Georgia. So Georgia is our largest concentration, but we're doing work in a majority of the states across the country now.
And something you had mentioned, I'm still kind of new to LinkedIn, because as soon as I graduated, well, before I graduated college, I had already accepted a job with Draffin Tucker, and to me, I didn't really see a need in LinkedIn. Obviously, I do now, just because from both a recruiting standpoint and just from kind of just sharing the firm and things like that. That's not in the slide, but definitely try to make sure that your LinkedIn is up to date and it's looking good, and have somebody review it. That kind of, like maybe a professor or somebody. That's a side note. But when you mentioned that about the 75 years and the foundation, I actually shared that on our LinkedIn page, or on my personal one, and just said how 75 years strong is a very good foundation that, I don't know, like you said, 80-something% you don't have, and there's so much knowledge just within those 99 employees, so much experience. And I don't think I've come across anything yet, because I've worked on some weird jobs or some weird circumstance jobs, and I've never had an issue where a partner or a manager was just like, I don't know what we're gonna, I don't know what to do here. So anyways.
They did that well, right?
I guess so. They didn't say it to me. They sweated when I walked out the door. But yeah, so we have a lot of experience and knowledge within the firm that makes you feel kind of comfortable in any kind of problem that comes up.
That's a really good point. I mean, we come across new challenges every day, but we got the infrastructure there to support that and to respond to those. So the day doesn't get mundane. We're continuing to come across new things, learn new things. I've been doing this 32 years now. I started my career with Draffin and Tucker. I literally learn something every day. I will learn something today here talking to you. So just keeps it fresh and exciting. So we got our first question. This is an easy one. There's no wrong answer. So if you want to be sure you don't get one wrong, this would be a good one to answer on. How about that? So when you hear the term, or when you hear somebody say, I'm an accountant, what do you think? We got an hour and 15 minutes.
So broad. It could be a lot of things.
Could be a lot of things.
You keep a track of whether or not you're making money, audits.
So you're maintaining financial records, perform an audit. Okay?
So task-wise, what kind of things do you think that means that they do on a daily basis?
Excel. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
What else? No wrong answers. Lots of math.
Okay.
Maybe phone calls.
You like
with
math?
clients.
Mm-hmm.
Some days. Phone calls with clients, interacting with
When you
clients.
start out, do you have to get all your clients yourself? Or do you, like, if
You have to
work-
get every single one of them yourself. No.
Yeah, like, for financial advisors, when they start out, they, start from nothing and build their way up. So I don't know if you kind of, you build your way up, or if you're giving.
I guess it depends on what industry you're going into, and then we'll also get into the difference between private and public accounting. Like, those are two separate kind of, that's your main path, and then you figure out within there what you do. But for the most part, no, I guess unless you're just starting out your own CPA firm right out the gate, then you have to get your own, but.
Right. So our firm, we've got 16 partners, right at 100 people. We've got about 18.5 million in revenues. So we've got a significant client base that we're serving. We're continuing to get, the accounting industry is growing really exponentially right now. And so we're getting requests for proposals every day. And really that's been happening since 2020. I mean, we thought everything might stop, and everything just took incredibly off. We've grown about 12% the last 2 years. And through that time, have actually declined to propose on a lot of work that was available to us. We just didn't think we had the capacity to take it on to be able to deliver the quality of services that we wanted to. So actually work with those clients to maybe find somebody else that might suit them better. So that growth is always important. Not expected to do that day one, but the longer you're there and the longer you're in the industry, it's kind of a migration towards those expectations. There's opportunity for that, and the ability to grow is really viewed as one of the most valued things in professional service firms. So a lot of folks can do the work, a lot of folks can do the task, the ability to go out and generate work. The industry uses the term rainmaker, that can really grow and continue that work. So good question. So what do we think of an accountant? We think, well, they do a lot of math, they do a lot of phone calls, they do a lot of Excel, they might do audits, they keep books.
Personality-wise.
Outgoing?
Do it.
Outgoing?
Okay.
I'm going. Thank you.
I don't
That's the first time I've
There's
always gotten
different,
that.
there's different types. I mean, some people, like, y'all are speaking.
That's
There's
true.
others, are behind desks.
Yes,
There's
that's
different
true.
types.
That's
Different
true.
types.
There's some stereotypes that typically is out there.
Professional?
That's a good one.
Analytical?
Analytical. Mm-hmm.
Very complimentary.
That's what I'm saying. Usually we get we get quiet, boring, lame. Well, when we spoke to a few high schools, we've gotten that anyways.
All right, so,
Yeah, okay, so what I'm gonna go over is, these are typically what we would be told, I wanna be sure. So typically these are kind of I call them myths about accountants or the accounting profession in general that I like to kind of just go over with people, and these are typically what I was waiting to hear from everybody. So, the first one is that we deal exclusively with taxes, so Jeff's already mentioned, audit. And then we do also have other professional services like consulting. We also, we specifically have a department called Resource Solutions that does a little bit of everything. That department even kind of acts as a interim CFO for some of our clients if they're in between CFOs or they need to get caught up from some kind of situation or whatever. So there's more than just taxes. I've touched one tax return, and it wasn't with Draffin and Tucker, it was with another firm, but they never asked me to do another one because of the amount of time it took me. So I realized I could not do a tax return, but there's still a place for me in accounting. So the next one is that you need to be a math genius. You really don't have to be, you do a lot of math, but Excel does a lot of the math for you, which is amazing. We do check over Excel though, because you can't trust Excel always. But you don't have to be a math genius, you just need to know problem solving more so than literal math. Number 3 is that the job is boring. Like you mentioned, I'm here today, we're both here today doing this, so I don't find this boring, I find this fun. But also, you're not sitting behind a desk every day. You are traveling to clients, you are taking clients to lunch, you are sometimes just entertaining some if they come to town maybe for whatever reason, but you're not behind a desk. You're usually going, or you're working with a team in say for example, your audit team in another room and kind of working together to problem solve to answer whatever kind of question you're trying to solve. So it's not just sitting solitarily by yourself behind a desk and typing on a keyboard. The next one is that you have to be an introvert. So I feel like over the years I've kind of realized that it's kind of a bonus to not be an introvert. It's kind of more, it's not required, but I think it's more helpful if you're not one, because you do have to make client calls. And the first ones you ever make are, I wanted to throw up because they also think of things differently than we think of things. So if I go call in a question and then they're questioning me back the very first time, I just feel sick to my stomach because I don't want to sound dumb. So I fully understand that. Everybody's been through that. But, you know, if you're kind of more extroverted, you kind of get to build relationships with your clients and with your partner and with your team and everything. So I do think it's a little bit more helpful if you're not so introverted. The next one is that there's no room for advancement. So for us, there are so many accounting opportunities out there. There's so many ladders that you can climb with this. Now, whether it's in the private sector or the public sector, there's always going to be room for advancement. So the way that Draffin and Tucker works, kind of, I guess, like for a better word, hierarchy, or the ladder, how it works, how you would move up, is you would enter in as a staff accountant, and you would work your way up to then a senior, to then a manager, and then maybe a supervisor, a manager, and then a partner. So there's always room to grow, to build up. It's kind of more just what you want to take on, and if you ask for any kind of challenges, things like that. So it's kind of up to you on your advancement part. Next one is that it's a male-dominated field. I should have looked at this before I came, but I think D&T might lean a little bit more female. I think our Albany office for sure does. But overall, the field, I think, if I remember right, it was more 60-40 towards women. And I know in all my accounting classes at Southern that there were more women in the classes than the guys, and maybe the guys just weren't showing up to class, I don't know. But it's not only male dominated like maybe it once was. And this next one, technology will take our jobs. That was a myth that my dad told me and tried to use to get me out of changing my major to accounting. He said H&R Block and TurboTax will take my job, which they might, but also I'm not doing taxes, so that doesn't really matter anyways. You can't get technology to do an audit, not a good audit anyways. So our jobs are not going anywhere. Actually, technology is helping our jobs, making them more efficient, making them smoother, kind of just making them better overall. And the last one is that the job is purely technical, i.e. adding numbers and doing all this math, and that you don't need to be creative. So the main part for our audit function is to be problem solvers. We don't go into an audit and say, this number, talk to the client, say, your number's wrong, I'm so sorry. You work together with the client to kind of see where that number came from, and you work out a solution together, and you kind of problem solve together. You don't necessarily say, this is wrong, we're giving you a bad opinion, like, we're done there. So there's a lot of creativity that has to be involved in the jobs overall. And that also goes to tax. If you've not taken a tax class, I remember my personal income tax class, I was always so nervous because of the way that you could kind of skirt lines and be creative with your taxes, and that always made me nervous. So you do have to be creative there too. So those are just some common beliefs or myths. So now I want to talk about the two main routes you can go in accounting. So you can either go public or you can go private. So we're public accountants, which kind of essentially means that we have multiple clients in multiple industries. Whereas if you were in private accounting, the main example I use every time is if you were an accountant for region bank. You just work for regions. You're doing kind of internal work, something like payroll maybe, or I don't know, payroll, cash, something like that. But whereas if you're in public accounting, you're kind of working for different kinds of industries and different kinds of clients and doing different things. So these are just some different jobs, and this is a mixture of a little bit of both. So a CPA, which is a license, but we'll go over the requirements for that license later. So you hear somebody say they're a CPA, they're an accountant with a CPA license. Highly distinguished, is that what I'm trying to say? In high regards, it's a hard test to pass, so it's a big deal. There's also forensic accounting. A lot of schools will offer forensic accounting as a class, so that's where I know in that class, I've seen in the past maybe a former FBI agent kind of teaches it, and you just kind of go into forensics and kind of, I don't know, that's one area you can look into fraud. You have an auditor, which is what I do, and an auditor can be in different industries. You can be an internal auditor, an external auditor. There's government accountant, there's a project accountant. Project accountant I kind of think of more like construction type thing. You kind of figure out what the costs are going to be, and you work with a company to figure that out. You have your tax accountant, of course, and then your corporate accountant and your CFO kind of go together. Corporate accountant is kind of like where I would imagine you would start out in private accounting and work your way up to CFO. So, any questions about any of these jobs?
For a new person that comes in, what sort of support is there to say, okay, we want you to get your CPA?
Mm-hmm.
So what route for that?
So our firm, we offer we have a direct bill agreement with Becker. Becker's a CPA review program. There's multiple programs out there. We've chosen Becker. It's kind of considered the premier one. If the employees sign up for that, we cover the cost of it in return for them signing a service counsel note. When they pass the exam, then they work 2 more years and that note is forgiven. We have that for the review course. We offer up to 6 days a year for employees to take the exam. The exam's undergoing some changes right now, but in very general terms, there's 4 parts to it. They're going to make it 6 and you have to choose 4 kind of thing. But right now there's 4 parts to it. You can take one at a time. Then there's a window, 18-month window currently that you have to complete all 4 of those in. Well, a lot of people, ask me, what about the exam? Is it hard? Is it impossible? And I hear all these horror stories. And I mean, I would suggest it's not a measure of intelligence. It is a measure of commitment and just studying and applying yourself. If you graduate with an accounting degree, you can pass the CPA exam. Things get in the way, life gets in the way, all of that, so it takes a commitment to do it. The sooner you can start, you have to have 150 hours, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. You have to have 150 hours to be licensed of education, but you can begin taking the exam with 120 hours, which in general is a bachelor's. So some people begin to take the exam while they're pursuing a master's or some postgraduate, and they're doing that, and then when they come out of school, ready to begin their career, they either have passed the CPA exam or substantial parts of it.
So you can take it while you're in school?
If you have 120 hours of education.
Does it make it better?
I would suggest it's better. particularly if you can surround yourself with somebody else that's doing that. I mean, there's just energy created there. You're in a study environment, and you can set a path and work with others and challenge each other and hold each other accountable. So I would say that's the best approach. When you get out and you start your career, there's a lot of transition there. You're doing a lot of things for the first time. You may have moved to a new town, you're with a new firm, you maybe never had a career, maybe you've had jobs but never a career position before. Everything's just coming at you, and if you've still got that exam hanging around, that is a pretty good challenge. So the more of it you can get completed prior to then, the better.
And you're still in like study mode too. It's hard to get back into study mode after you've been working a year and not, you know, used to getting off work, going home and doing whatever you want, instead of where maybe right now you're in school, maybe you have just like a part-time job and you're used to getting home and studying. So that mode can be hard to kind of get back into. We've seen people do both though. People come in with it already done, people come in with just one part left, or people come in with none and then pass it once they start. So it's kind of your route, but I think it does tend to go a little quicker if you've already had it done.
Yeah, and just to round out the answer to that question, so we provide that support, we offer the days off to take the exam, find the time to study, that's on the individual, but then we have a bonus, and it's a graduated bonus depending on how soon they pass, but if somebody passes within 2 years of beginning employment, they get a bonus for passing as well. Anything else before we keep going? Appreciate the questions and the interaction. So we've talked kind of about what accountants were, what accountants are not. We've talked about jobs in accounting. So considering all that, what makes a good accountant? Organized?
Problem solving skills.
Problem solving?
Tenacity.
Tenacity? Absolutely. That it? Maybe anybody could be an accountant, right? I'm going to suggest leadership. And we can put those things that were just mentioned, we can put those under here. I actually, Emma wrote on my note to add critical thinking, problem solving, because I think it certainly belongs up here. In all honesty, I see it as one of the things that may be missing the most in entry-level people entering the accounting field today. It's just that critical thinking. But any organization needs leaders. What's a leader? I mean, there's certainly positional leadership. Somebody has a title. I mean, think the military with the hierarchy. But I mean, what's a leader?
Somebody that following their example by their actions and personality.
Have you heard me talk about this before? Because you're just filling in the blanks. Absolutely. If somebody is influencing somebody else, they're a leader. Somebody has probably looked at you this morning in this room and taken some cue from you. You probably looked at somebody this morning and taken some cue. That's influence. So leaders are everywhere. There's good leaders, there's bad leaders. People surround themselves with influence. I mean, if you don't believe that, did your parents worry about who you hung around with when you were a teenager? Do they worry about who you hang around with now? So, I mean, there's leadership and have influence. Some of the characteristics we typically think of, obviously integrity. The public accounting world is founded on integrity. It's in our principles, it's in our standards, it's in our core value as a firm. I will tell you, never, ever, ever compromise your integrity. There will be opportunities to do so. Do not give that up. You can give it away, but nobody can take it from you. Don't give that up. Initiative, professionalism, just continuously improving. I'd like to tell you we're perfect as a firm, but we're not. We're seeking to be better tomorrow than we were yesterday. We just continuously improve and build upon the successes that we have. And then just striving for that success. And that's a lifelong journey. It's not, you know, you may think, well, when I get through this class, I'm done. Or when I make it through this semester, I'm done. Or when I graduate from here, I'm done. No, sorry. You're not. Pursuing that success it is a lifelong journey, and just hope you have that passion for that. I would definitely add critical thinking to this. Like I said, just hugely important. We're looking at our orientation and how can we even build some exercises in there on critical thinking. How can we have some team building exercises in there, and just encouraging and seeing if we can build and increase the aptitude for critical thinking.
Okay, so I just kind of wanted to give you kind of an idea of what you would expect in your first year as a public accountant, and by that I'm kind of going off my own experience as well as a little bit of research that I did as well. So first day, you have graduated, or maybe you're an intern, so maybe you haven't graduated yet, but you come in for Draffin Tucker. We have our first 3 days are orientation days, so that you can kind of get used to the group, you know, your peers that you're coming in with. You're also getting to know a bunch of people at the firm, a bunch of managers, different levels. And you're also learning kind of technology, how to use the software so that you're better, well adjusted for your first week. And we're also kind of going over leadership and just kind of our values as a firm. So your first day, you're just kind of shaking out the nervousness, and you're just getting used to the office. And then by your first week, you're getting your job assignments, you're figuring out what your team is that you're going to work for. Most of the time, starting out, you're only going to work for one team. So you're going to work, and that's typically, say you're an intern. So typically it would be you as an intern, maybe a first year, second year staff, a manager, and a partner. So that's kind of your team of 4. We just had some new people start with us a few weeks back, and a lot of people in their first week were already driving and traveling to job sites, to client sites. So that's also a possibility in your first week or two to go on site. COVID's kind of changed things with that. So we're still going on site a lot, but just some clients prefer, because we are healthcare, so we are going to hospitals. Some clients are just preferring that we don't come, but we still are, for the most part, traveling. So you're getting your job assignments, you're either traveling to the client. A lot of times too, when you're first starting out for your first week, or maybe even your first month, you're working in your in charge's office. So another term is in charge, so that's whoever is in charge of you, so who you get your assignments from, who you ask your question to, that kind of stuff. So you might even be in their office. The last intern that I had her in my office for a month, just so she could easily reach over to me and ask a question instead of her walking downstairs to come talk to me. So now we're getting into our first month. Now you're working more through assignments. You're more focused on just your assignments as a team. You are still asking plenty of questions, but you're starting to get a little bit more confidence in how to do things. You're not maybe asking so many of the technical questions. Maybe now you're getting more into your critical questions, as far as, oh, I've noticed that this looks funky. What is this about? And then you're kind of going over that, conceptual questions with your in charge and things like that. Not so much, how do I clock in? How do I keep my time kind of questions. And then by the end of your first year, it's really cool to come back around to your same job assignment that you maybe did the first time. I say it's really cool, but you go back and see all the mistakes that you made. You'll be looking at last year and you'll say, wow, who did this? This is terrible. And then you'll see your initials on it. So you did those. But you start to realize how much you've actually learned. For us, you also get annual evaluations. So you'll meet with your partner that you work for, and you'll get an evaluation of kind of how you've done over the year. And then, any promotions that might happen, anything like that. And you're just starting to get a little bit more staff. Maybe by your second year, you might even have your own staff. You might turn around and start having your own staff, maybe between 1 year and 2 years. I always say, day 1 to your first year, that's when you're kind of learning the ropes more. Your first year to your second year, I always say is a roller coaster. And I think that's anywhere, because you're starting, instead of at the end of your first year, you're getting really good at your tasks. You're getting really good at, for example, audit. You're getting good at how to do audit procedures. But between your first and your second year, now you're starting to teach others how to do it, and you're realizing, oh, maybe I don't know exactly. And then once that second year hits, you just start learning more and more. It's not so much of a roller coaster. That second year can be that between 1 and 2 can be kind of rough for some people, but as long as you just push through it and know that everybody else has gone through it the same, and there's people going through it at the same time. It's just, there's so much that you're learning between that short amount of time just from exposure. I can't really speak to experience past 3 because I've only been doing this for 3 years. But any questions about any expectations or any of these items?
So what is this? This one's easy. I'll jump on this one. Hourglass. Anything else? Go ahead, Terry. Might I suggest to you, it might look a little bit like the accounting industry. There's a lot of folks coming in at the bottom. There's a lot of folks like me that are starting to think about retiring one day. And then we have a compression in the middle. You can see hourglass here. So as Taylor said, folks coming in, 1, 2, 3-year people. You can be a senior in our firm in 2 years. As seniors are out running jobs, they're project leads, they're engagement leads. They are the main point of contact with a client. Supervisors is beyond senior. They're handling more complex engagements, some similar duties, but maybe more projects, more complex in projects. Managers are overseeing multiple engagements and generally multiple teams, and then partners at the top. So if this is happening, what does that say about somebody sitting in intermediate 1 today? Huge opportunities. I mean, I think I've been saying for 30 years, there's never been a better time to enter the accounting industry. I might have been wrong for those 30 years, but I'm certainly not wrong now. There is incredible opportunity out there. Like I said, you can be here in 2 years with a firm. Just get out, apply yourself, willingness to learn, willingness to engage, just being present. We have, I mentioned we're going to our 4th generation. We've got 16 partners. 15 of the 16 of us began our career at Draffin and Tucker. We have very tenured employees throughout our firm. I am confident, I wouldn't be out participating in recruiting if I wasn't confident in this. I'm confident that we have the infrastructure for every person that joins our firm to succeed. Now, they got to engage, they got to apply themselves, but that infrastructure is there. So just coming out, that willingness to learn, that willingness to apply yourself, that willingness to maybe push beyond your comfort zone sometime. Taylor talked about that first year, that second year might be a little rough. I mean, that 29th year might be a little rough too sometimes, because we're still learning. And we're continuing to learn, and that's what makes it rewarding. It's what makes it challenging. What makes me keep coming to work every day. It is just those opportunities to continue to grow. So really, any professional service firm would rather this look like a pyramid. So if you think more of leveraging. So any public accounting firm you're talking to is seeking these people. This really 3 to 7 to 8 year person. Because that's where that leverage, that opportunity to leverage is missing in the public accounting industry, really in most public accounting firms as well. So you can get to here, I mean, it is just wide open right now.
Earlier I had mentioned kind of just how much you wanted to take on, or even ask for some more complex engagements type things. Some engagements are just so routine every year and there's not anything crazy going on. And then some, I don't know, there's a purchase, there's a sale, something different is happening. But just kind of making yourself open and kind of just stepping out there and saying, I really would like to experience this, like I've heard that this is going on. That's how you can kind of move up a little bit sooner. So just, it really is how much you're wanting to take on. So. Yeah.
The folks that leave after they become senior or in that kind of first couple of years, and then even up into the manager level, do they tend to go to a client or do they go to another industry? What's kind of your...
So over the years, they tended to go to clients and become an accountant in industry. Particularly in the last 2 to 3 to 4 years, there seems to have been more of an exodus from accounting into other industries. A lot of debate why that is. I'm not sure why that is. I mean, You know, maybe it's some of those myths, maybe they say, well, I'm just dealing with math, I'm just dealing with taxes, I'm doing the same thing over and over. Well, they may be, but there's an opportunity not to do that. I mean, even in our firm, you know, there's statistics out there that individuals will have 17 jobs in their career. 17. In my opinion, that doesn't have to be 17 employers. You can have more than one job at Draffin and Tucker. I mean, how you define a job, I mean, your tasks, your responsibilities, et cetera, whether that's title or what you do, et cetera. But those opportunities are there. So there's a book, I'm going to diverge for just a minute. There's a book written by Jim Collins called Good to Great. And don't go read it, it's this thick. But in it, he suggests that anything that a business does, they do for one of three reasons. They do it because they make money. I'm okay right here, right?
Yeah.
So they do it because they make money. I mean, businesses are in business to make profits. They do it because they have a competitive advantage. They are better than anybody else at what they do. So, you know, or the third reason they do it is they just love to do it. They're passionate about doing it. This works for anything. It works for lemonade stands. Why has somebody got a lemonade stand, you know, out in their front yard? Maybe they're doing it to make money. Maybe they got better lemons and better lemonade than anybody else, and they just have a competitive advantage. Maybe they just love seeing people drink and enjoy their lemonade. So they're doing it for one of those three reasons. Does that kind of make sense, what he's getting at there? He suggests that these circles go something like this. So you can see the Venn diagram. So we make money, we're passionate, and we have competitive advantage. What if you wind up there? What if you wind up where you're doing all three? I would suggest at Draffin and Tucker, we know how to make money, we're successful, we've been doing this 75 years. I would certainly suggest we have some competitive advantages. You know, I mentioned healthcare, for example. Well, I mean, we have it throughout our firm, but I mentioned healthcare a while ago. I mean, it's 80% of our practice. I mean, we will go up against any firm competing for that. So we certainly have that. What we need is people doing what they're passionate about. What if you had an opportunity to choose to do what you were passionate about in a place that was supportive and had an infrastructure for your success? I want that. I mean, that's what everybody's after in a career. So, I'm getting incredibly excited and y'all will have to stop me. But, so if somebody comes and says, you know, I'm doing audits and these things are driving me crazy, or I don't ever want to see another tax return in my life. I mean, I don't do my own tax return. Taylor mentioned she doesn't do taxes. The lines run together for me on those forms. But I love what I do, and I'm able to do what I'm passionate about doing in a place that is successful, that has competitive advantages. So when you think about when people leave positions, they leave the industry, they leave their employer, I would encourage you at least have a conversation before you do so. Too many people, I think, walk in with a resignation in hand and may choose something that might not be in their best interest, or maybe there was something better. Or this, we've got one more.
May I ask a quick question?
Absolutely.
So one of the things that I experience as a challenge is how does one become passionate about accounting? So when you're in your job, what makes an accountant passionate? So these students can say, well, I'm doing this.
I'm going to answer that for me.
Okay.
I'm not sure I can answer it for others. It is seeing other people be successful. I have seen the opportunity for accounting to be a tool and a path and a vehicle for that. Whether it be in our firm or whether it be with clients. You know, they've got some challenge. You know, just take, you mentioned keeping books and records. I mean, if a business owner out there is making decisions about their business, they have to have accurate books and records in order to make those decisions. If you don't have good information, you're probably not going to make good decisions. It would just be luck. So seeing that and being able to support people in their success and in their growth, that's what I love to do. I love to see people see this and realize I can be successful in doing this without having to make the change that I thought I was gonna have to make. So that's me. Is that a fair answer to
Absolutely.
your question?
Yes, thank you.
I'd like to answer that too.
Yeah.
Well, so, during our summer leadership program, which I'm gonna mention later so that I can show y'all where to sign up for it, because we'd love y'all to apply. Our summer leadership program last year, this past summer, we had we kind of ended it off on a panel. So we had some managers, some partners, some new staff, maybe even some interns and everybody in between. We had a big panel in our big training room upstairs, and we had all the summer leadership attendees kind of just come in there and just say, you can ask literally anything you want. Anything you want at all, ask the panel. And that was one of the questions that one of the girls asked. She just said, you know, why do you love your job? I guess was kind of the way that she had worded it. And there was a few different people of different ages that all said this, and I kind of agree with it for me personally as well. With our industry in particular, well, healthcare, like it is 80%. So with our healthcare industry practice in particular, I myself work on small rural hospitals. So your tiny towns, your really small ones that, you know, if you have something major happen to you, you're going there to get triaged, then you're moving, you know, you're going somewhere bigger. That's kind of the industry that I've been just kind of put on, were these smaller ones. And a lot of these hospitals, if I'm an auditor, a lot of these hospitals don't make a lot of money because they're usually, you know, lower income kind of communities. So not everybody's going to pay their hospital bills, so they don't have any they don't have a lot of revenue coming in. So what they have to do instead is borrow money from maybe the USDA or something like that. Well, the USDA is only going to give that money that's going to continue that hospital to operate if they have an audit of their books every year. That is due on X amount of date, and you have to report X, Y, and Z. So, you know, without us coming in and auditing their books and providing this service to them, then that hospital could potentially not even exist, and the small communities wouldn't even have, you know, access to this healthcare. So that is a lot of, there was, I think, 2 or 3 different people on the panel said that, and afterwards I kind of thought about that, and I kind of thought that to myself as well. It's like, it does feel like you're helping other people, very indirectly, but you kind of are by helping keep a hospital open, if that makes any sense.
Really good point.
That one's deeper, but that's fine.
We hear that a lot in our firm.
You just don't think about it.
Mm-hmm. I'm gonna offer one more thing. So if this was, and we're gonna talk more about compensation, but if this were compensation and this was years of experience, industry compensation for accountants would start, let's say here. Public accounting, for whatever reason, tends to start here. Industry compensation generally goes like this. Public accounting compensation goes like this. So there is a opportunity, and I'm going to say this is probably 3-ish years. There's an opportunity for these people to have an immediate short-term gain. So individuals have to look at that and say, am I willing to make this investment in myself for this? I know 3 years seems like an eternity. I promise you it's not. Just trust me. It is really not. But, you know, when you see this going on in this slide is why this is happening. I started in public accounting 32 years ago. I'm going to retire from public accounting, obviously. Taylor spent her entire career thus far in public accounting. We may be biased, but you can go pull data and find this.
You plateau a lot quicker in private than you do. Maybe, like you say, you start out, but there's not that much room to grow because maybe you start out with how that other slide had like corporate accountant. Maybe there's one more step and then CFO. Well, you're not going to be CFO in 3 years, so hopefully. So, you know, there's a lot more room to grow.
So when this becomes a pyramid, it's really easy to grow a pyramid, which is why firms seek that and how firms grow. I mean, you can add another layer to that pyramid very easily. Great discussion.
Any more thoughts? Okay, the next slide, Ms. Carol was on.
How we doing on time?
So, real good.
Okay.
This is the only slide I didn't review beforehand, so we're not gonna get angry. Because we're gonna put a hurricane here. But, I'm so sorry. So, the next two slides are kind of your education requirements to getting to this point. So, of course, you need to graduate high school. And then, of course, you need a bachelor's in accounting. So, then that gets you to that 120. We do have some staff that don't have a master's. They are able to get their extra hours. The reason most of the time that we encourage getting a master's degree is to get your license, because that's your stepping stone. Of course, you can do a MAC or an MBA, but that is the stepping stone. As far as education is concerned, this is kind of your last stop is your exam. We do have some that got all of their hours somehow. Maybe it was just picking up extra classes, or maybe, I don't know if they changed their major, somehow they get classes to count. So they didn't have to get a master's, but that would be kind of your stepping stone to get there. And then the next slide is your CPA requirements. So we've already talked about the requirement of needing a bachelor's degree, because that gets you to your 120 hours. So you'll need a total of 150, and those extra hours, you need to have 30 hours specifically that are in the accounting. That's more than just like, I guess, maybe accounting 1 or intro to accounting. And then at least 24 hours in business. Typically, your bachelor's degree gets you almost there. I think the only thing you'll be lacking if you get a bachelor's in accounting would be the extra upper level accounting, maybe, if that sounds right.
Yeah, so you notice we had masters of business, MBAs, and masters of accountancy on the earlier slide. Masters is not a technical requirement to be licensed. The 150 hours is the requirement, and the component of the 30 hours, they call it upper level accounting, above introductory business, you'll have this. So if you just start into accounting in undergraduate, you're going to graduate, you're going to have 120 hours, and maybe you had some dual enrollment or AP credits, etc. But you're going to come out of your bachelor's with 120 hours. So most people, if they've just gone straight through and they're seeking this level of education, they're going to go on and get their either their MBA, probably focusing in accounting, with some electives in accounting, or get their master's of accountancy. That's going to give them the additional 30 hours to get to the 150, and the 30 hours concentrated in another level. So that's why you hear people talk about masters and postgraduate. But we also run into people that, for whatever reason, maybe they've changed their major. So they're sitting there with 140 hours. Maybe they have double majored. That's also a path to get to the 150. So master's is not a requirement. It's a really common path, though. That makes sense?
And some of the master's classes do help on your CPA exams. I know, I did undergrad and grad at Georgia Southern, and I did a MAC instead of an MBA. And one of the classes were specifically set up just for you to take your exam. So you wouldn't actually physically meet just once a week, or not once a week, however often that class was, Tuesday, Thursdays. That time was devoted to studying, and you just pass the class by taking at least 2 exams by the end of the semester. So you do have vehicles that do things like that, but also if you have like, I don't know, one of your master's classes maybe is in like econ or something like that. There's not an econ part of the test, but there is one part of the CPA license exam. There is one part that throws a little bit of like econ and business management in there, so those classes can just help you in the end with your exam. So just kind of whatever. I'm always pro doing a master's, but I understand sometimes financially that's not always feasible for some people.
So if you choose to go a route other than the master's, which is designed for this, if you choose to go a route other than the master's, the 150 hours, you can figure that out pretty easily on your transcript. The 30 hours accounting above introductory level can be a little more tricky. If somebody showed me their transcript and said, do I have the 30 hours, I would not answer that question. Because every school has got a different course title, a different course number. Some people will tell you that in general, 300 and 400 or 3,000, 4,000, however the school uses the numbering system, those classes will count. So your 300 and 400 level accounting classes typically are thought to count towards that. But You can go to NASPA, the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, and drill down to whichever state. Some of these things are state specific, but drill down to that state board, and then you can find more information on that. And even reach out and contact them. Send them your transcript if that's the situation you're in. Say, here's where I am, what do I need to qualify, and which of these qualify.
Like Jeff said, you don't have to have all the hours to start testing.
Right.
You can always start testing and then finish them out. And then also with it required, so you take the exam, you pass it, you qualify for the exam based on your education. You still have, you're still not licensed until you work for a year as well. So work for a year in public accounting, then you'll finally become a CPA. So there's some experience involved. Any questions about these requirements or education in general?
So I have a question. I help a lot of the students here kind of navigate their path toward what am I going to do first and what am I going to do second, because although you can take the exam right after you finish school, but then you also have, a requirement to have another 30 hours of schooling. And then you also might want to get a job. And so the order of events there can be different for each person. And as a matter of fact, I know 2 students from GSW have just recently started with you guys, and one of them already had their master's, and one of them is now starting their master's.
Mm-hmm.
So if you could speak to that a little bit as far as what you think a good path is.
So, obviously, the more you walk in the door with, the better prepared you are. That's anything, that's not unique to us. So, I think there's power in focus. So when you're in school, focusing on school. When you're taking the exam, focusing on taking the exam. When you're in your career, focus on taking your career. So me personally thinks the more that you can segment those, understanding the exam is probably going to overlap one or the other. Probably just law of large numbers, every person's different, but probably that's the better recipe for success. Beginning a career can be a bit challenging. Can be a bit daunting. So, every person is different. Every person has their own situation. Somebody came in, some people come in with dual enrollment hours and they enter the bachelor's and undergrad with different hours. So, probably the paths are, what you're doing in Hellbound is probably pretty challenging. No 2 people have the exact same set of circumstances, I would imagine. So everybody's beginning college with a different number of hours, and so those paths. Maybe people are changing majors, etc. I think there's power in focus. So the sooner you can complete school and the sooner you can get that exam behind you, the better off you are. Remember that hourglass, remember this compensation chart, all of those things.
But like I said, sometimes it's just not possible. So like you say, there are different students that have all. So right now we have a handful that I can just think of that are taking the exam right now and working. And the one thing too, you do start out work. Your first year is kind of lighter in terms of like your workload and stuff like that. But as you gain more responsibility and you gain staff under you, it does get a little bit harder to find time after work to start to still want to study. So I think it is, and I think too, if you just get that first one passed, then you'll get motivated to pass the rest of them. You won't really get, not necessarily, you won't be as discouraged to be like, well, I just won't study tonight, I'm so tired. Maybe you worked an extra hour or something, or wanted to go out with some of the coworkers after work or something. So I do think it is best, but it's not always going to be possible fully.
Remember I said the exam's not a measure of intelligence, measure of commitment. Got like 2 more slides?
One more.
One more. I'm going to draw one more chart. So this was drawn from, Taylor knows where I'm going. This was drawn from me 32 years ago when I started work, and maybe this explains some of what we're talking about. So this is perception, and this is time. So I've been at Draffin and Tucker about 15 minutes, and in my orientation, which we now do this in about 30 minutes into orientation, partner flipped over a sheet of paper and just drew this on the backside just as sloppily as I'm going to draw it here. And said, you've just gotten out of school, you just moved to a new town, you just began a new career, you got your first career position ever. Your perception of your abilities is very high. And are ready to conquer the world. We're all gonna change the world, right? At some point, maybe next week, maybe next month, maybe 6 weeks, 6 months from now, your perception of your abilities is going to do this. And why do you tell me that? Because it happens to everybody. Maybe when you started college, you just were blowing through high school, never studied, whatever. I got this. Has anybody ever had an awakening moment when they began something new? Raise both my hands. So this happens. For me, this was about 3 months in. I had worked on a large health system in Middle Georgia, multi-campus health system, chart of accounts, about 4,000 accounts. Worked on that for about 6 or 8 weeks. Came back, and by then, I started in September. By then, we're getting close to tax season, and we were waiting on some information from that healthcare client, and the manager that I was working with, now a partner in our firm, said, we're beginning to get some tax returns, go up front and see if you can help one of the tax partners with the tax returns. So he gave me 2 that were probably really, really simple. Did you hear Taylor say how long she took on one while ago? They never offered her another one?
I tried.
Did that count?
I tried.
I mean, I went from 4,000 accounts that I was working on. I mean, I wasn't leading the engagement, but that's where I was, to trying to do a closeout with about 20 accounts. And, I mean, I might as well walk over there and stood at that blank wall. I was as lost as I could be. I think I went down here. So this happens, and this is real. What also happens, and what you may have experienced if you had this transition, is this happens. You begin to increase your performance. What he told me was, this never was real. This was my perception. This is real. This is your abilities. And you're beginning to realize, and you're beginning to be able to assess your performance based on your abilities and your perception. I'm going to suggest, maybe this goes more like this, with, you have some aha moments and some things come together. I heard Taylor talking a while ago, you have some ups and downs. I mean, maybe it goes like this, but either way, you're increasing. So, where I always answer the question that you asked from is thinking about this. What was told me 32 years ago. Because I just see this happening time and time and time again. We still do this in our orientation today at about 8:30 on the first morning. So that's the more that can happen before you get here, I think the better off individual is in better position for success. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I lied, there were 2 slides, but this one you'll like though. So these are just some ideas. We got this, you found this on some, I don't remember.
Yeah,
what
so this was
article.
probably a year old, some salary medians, so not ranges. Maybe, and if you pull a survey that's a year old, then the data is probably 2 years old. So.
And this is a mixture of both public and private. So like where you would have like your controller and your CFO, that's your private route, and then these are your publics. Again, staff accountant is like within your first year, maybe your second. Senior is your second or maybe your 3rd year, and then manager is just a bit more experience. And then I don't even know what experience time is for controllers and CFOs.
So one of the things, any one organization in industry is going to have one controller and one CFO, which is why this slide, that comp level for them is much flatter. You really have to change organizations, change positions. Maybe that CFO has to retire, they have to leave. It's more of a bottleneck to progress in the industry. So that's why we have that phenomenon we have on that.
But these are some, like you say, these are probably like 2 years old. I almost updated them too, but I didn't think about it till too late.
Slide this above that line there.
Yeah. Okay. So just to close out, kind of the steps for you to take now. If you had the dual enrollment beforehand, maybe that'll help you be able to get a little bit further now. But also taking advantage of summer classes. I love summer classes because you just get done like that. It was crazy. In 1 month, you'd be done with the whole class. Apply for some summer leadership programs. We're going to have a few extra minutes, so I'm going to show you where to apply online. But our summer leadership program, just a quick overview, it's a 3-day event in our Albany office. I'm not going to tell you, the dates are online. I don't want to tell you the wrong dates. But it's a 3-day event in our Albany office. You come down, we put you in a hotel, we take care of all your meals and all your transportation while you're there, not to Albany, of course. And we have some guest speakers. We do some team building. We try to do a little bit of charity work in there too. And students from all different schools will come and you'll apply. A lot of accounting firms do this, and so this is what ours is going to be like. And then always we're looking into internships, always applying. We do. Not all firms do year-round internships. We do, so that means that we do internships spring, summer, and fall. So some firms only do spring, some do spring and fall, but we also do offer that summer internship. I believe we are at capacity for summer 2023. So this coming summer, we're at capacity for interns, which is awesome. But still, if you want to apply for, or if you want to talk about a fall one possibly. And then career fairs. I know that we have a career fair coming up here, and we'll be here for sure. But just making sure you're attending those, polishing your resumes to bring. And even if you think you're too young to start looking at internships or anything like that, still come. You might not be, it feels like everybody's getting younger and younger because of dual enrollment. So it's crazy when we have somebody like under 21 already coming in. But still come, even if you just to make a connection with a firm and make a relationship. Any questions about any of those? Okay. I'm going to show y'all where real quick on our website. So if you just go to Draffin. So this is our homepage. If you go all the way over to careers, and then there's this summer leadership program. So it'll be June 8th and 9th, but I said 3 days. So it's 2 full days and 2 nights. You'll come in on the 7th, yes, and we'll have like a welcome dinner reception type thing that night. And then you'll be there the 8th, and then on the 9th of somewhere mid-afternoon, we'll send you home. So that'll be how it is. And we have pictures on this page for you to see past ones. So if you want to apply, you just click apply now, and it's a super short, just fill it out and upload your resume. And that's all there is to it. So we'd love to have you apply. Last year was a good time. Last year was our first year after COVID, or in person since COVID. So we really enjoyed it. We had we had staff come down from our Atlanta office to come speak and take people out to lunch and things like that. So it's a good time.
It's geared to share more with you about the industry, more about our firm, how you can thrive and how you can be successful.
Questions
Any
about
questions?
today?
We got some time, right?
10:45, is that right?
Any
Yeah.
questions,
10 minutes.
comments, rude remarks? We'll take anything. What did we talk about you want to talk about?
Who thinks they would want to work in Atlanta? And what would that look like, bridging from here to Atlanta, and what's your relationship with that office?
So when we opened our Atlanta office, we opened it in 2011, the end of 11. We had been a one-office firm for over 30 years prior to that. So our culture was very important. We had, one office, that the culture was there. And so we looked at, how do we do that? I'm getting to your answer, but how do we do that? Do we acquire another firm? Do we just go up there and hang a shingle? Do we move some of our folks? And in working through that process, what we said is our culture is extremely important to us. We're going to move some of our folks. So at the time, we probably had about 75 folks in our firm. We moved 7 to Atlanta. All of them wanted to move, that was their choice, and had a couple partners and individuals spread throughout the firm. And then we began recruiting. Right now, just pre-COVID, we had about 30 folks there. Some of those folks are continuing to work remote. So right now, our policy is that we're optional on attendance. We encourage, the younger you are and the more you're just getting started, you're probably better off in the office and being around some other people. But our formal policy is optional. So in Atlanta, we're on the 12th floor, you're parking in a parking garage and elevators and high rise, all that. We've probably got about 30, 40% of people coming in most days there. In Albany, we're probably closer to 85 to 90. I mean, we pull right up against the building and park. That's a little bit of difference in those two offices. When we moved to Atlanta, we said we're not going to do anything to disrupt client relationships. So we had people, we had clients that we were serving all over the state of Georgia, from North Georgia to South Georgia, out of our Albany office. And when we moved, I can think of a couple of examples. One of our Atlanta partners was serving a client in Donaldsonville, Georgia, south of Albany. They serve that client today. One was, the Atlanta partners were serving a client in Colquitt, Miller County. They serve that client today from Atlanta. We've got folks in Albany that were serving clients in Rome, Georgia, North Georgia, Gainesville, Georgia. They're serving those clients today. So we left all those relationships intact. And so both of them are still doing, quote, all the work. It's not that we just do tax from there, healthcare from there. We're still, one of our values is maintaining a one firm attitude. So we've approached that we are one firm with two offices. And so we continue to work across those. At any given time, if we went back to that slide of associates and seniors and managers and all that, we'll have a different mix. And it's not necessarily where we can staff a whole engagement team out of Albany or a whole engagement team out of Atlanta. So we're continuously working across offices. Technology supporting that. Sometimes somebody may come from Atlanta down to Albany and spend a week or so, or vice versa. But opportunities in both offices. Culture. They say if you have an office that has 2 floors in a building, you'll have some differences in culture across floors. But I think reality is we've done a really good job of maintaining our culture across that. Some differences, get to work back and forth and is different. And, a lot of folks are home in the office, they go home at lunch. A little tougher in Atlanta. So, but the opportunity's there in both.
See a lot of the younger, staff sometimes want to, maybe you're living in Americus now and you want to go see what Atlanta's like. So that's happened. We had a staff that lived in Valdosta and went to school in Valdosta and also lived there. And she actually went up to our Atlanta office and interned there. And then the internship led into a full-time position. Well, since we work across offices, she was my staff, and of course I'm in Albany. So she had called me. She had kids and everything, and she was like, "Man, I'm looking at house prices up here, and it's just crazy. Like getting ready to move her family up there and looking for something." And I said, "Well, knowing her situation, I was like, why don't you move to Albany?" She's like, "Well, I didn't know I could." And I was like, "Yeah." I said, "We just want, you can stay with the firm, move to the Albany office." So she was like, "Okay." And then she called our HR director and got it approved, and she just moved to Albany so she could afford a house. So
The salary's the same for Atlanta and Albany, because like you said, the cost of living.
yeah.
They are. We're competing for talent throughout the Southeast, really across the country, but throughout the Southeast. So we're not competing for talent just in Albany or just in Atlanta. When we're going to schools, anywhere we go, we're competing with people that can go work anywhere. And so we realize that, and so that's how we set our compensation. So that results in that compensation being the same.
So you should be able to be comfortable in both, basically. It's a good question to continue to ask people that.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it common that your interns end up having like full-time career? Like, is it an easy transition from like intern to like being?
So our whole approach, if we go back to the tenure that I was talking about, the 15 and 16 partners, and we're coming up on a 4th generation, and we got to keep that going. Every person that we bring into our firm, our plan is for them to retire from our firm. So that's the approach we take. Doesn't always work. Sometimes they choose something different. Sometimes maybe we have to choose something different. But that's the plan. So that's the investment that we make in them, that's how we compensate, that's how we train, that's how we do everything we do, is we believe they're gonna retire from there. That is the same for an intern. So when we bring an intern in, our plan is for them to come back, be full-time, work with us, retire from Draffin Tucker. So our interns, Taylor was talking about your first day, first week, you're getting client assignments, and that we had some people in their first week were headed to job sites. Some of those were interns. If you walked in a room where one of our teams were working, and there was an intern and a full-time person in there, you couldn't tell the difference. They're doing the same thing, the same tasks, interacting with clients, like that. Because we believe they're going to finish that intern, and maybe they've got to go back to school, maybe they've got to finish their education, but we believe they're coming back. So whatever investment we make in them in their training, none of that's lost. Might get deferred a little, but our plan is for them to come back. So when we bring an intern on, that's our plan. Now, we look at that also gives them and us an opportunity. I mean, are we a match for each other? Performance, etc. So it's not an automatic, but that's our plan. So we will design that for whatever works for the student. So I'm going to get my head here a little bit probably, so you'll correct me. Schools that are granting credit hours, typically 3 credit hours, what we see most times is they require a 10-week internship. Is that fair? So that gets the 3 credit hours if you're choosing to get credit, and most of our interns do. So we have 3 start dates a year. We start right after New Year's, so that was like January 3rd this year. We have one right after this current semester, whether we call that winter or spring. So those folks are starting May 31st, and then we have one after summer semester, which starts August, first week of August. So interns and full-time people start on those dates. So, what we will also do, though, is we'll extend an internship beyond the 10 weeks. So if somebody said, I want to intern the entire semester, we will do that. Some schools, I'm not familiar with the mechanics here, but some schools, mini nesters and different things there, built for internships. Sometimes it's more common in the spring to let folks go to tax season and then come back and do it. But what we do is say, and what works for the employee. Keep in mind, we plan on them retiring from Draffin Tucker. We know we're going to have to work around some things. So we start right there.
I'll say that some accounting firms like for you to just intern and not take any classes at the same time. But Draffin Tucker works with you to where some folks have interned 3 days a week full time and then gone to school 2 days a week. So that's a possibility.
Yeah, I mean, in the last, just with what's going on in the labor market, we have become far more creative, far more adaptable, and it's with that long-term vision. We've got some individuals right now that are getting their master's here who are on that part-time schedule, and we know that's just for a season, so we'll work with them through that.
I think we're done. We got right at 10:44.
Wow, okay. So I've got some cards here.
I was bad.
Got mine. We are both on the website. You can find us both there, but it's got phone, email, all of that. Take a look if there's anything we can answer. If you think of something 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks from now that you want you to ask or didn't want to ask in here, just reach out to one of us and we'll get you an answer. So, appreciate y'all's participation and
Thank y'all. Do you want me to hit stop recording?
Stop recording, yeah.
Yes, ma'am.